Once you have your argument, you want to prove what you are trying to argue, what you're trying to say. And the best support in terms of using literature in an English class or in history is using support from other texts. So, to quote, a quote is a strong support because we know that you are not paraphrasing it incorrectly. Like, you can't refute what the text says. We can refute your opinion of what the text says. So you don't want to quote all the time either, because then it's less your words and more this other person's words, when it should really mostly be your opinion, your argument about what the text is saying. Alright, anyway, so when you're quoting a normal amount of text, you put quotation marks around it. Then at the end of the sentence or at the end of the phrase in parentheses, you have the author's last name, followed by a page number. If there is no page number, just the author's last name. If it's clear you're only talking about one author for a long period of time, you don't need to keep using that parenthetical citation, especially if you say the author's name in the sentence. If you are citing poetry, you want to do line or a slash between line breaks, and then for a stanza, a double slash. You can also include the line number instead of a page number for a poem is helpful. If you're quoting more than 4 lines of prose and 3 lines of verse, your quotations go in a freestanding block of text without quotation marks. So you indent it 1/2 inch from the left, so you indent it more than just having it in the paragraph. You still have double spacing, and you still have parenthetical citation at the end, but it's after the period or the original punctuation. So it looks like that, for example, or a poem, you can do it like that. You don't really want to cite more than that in this paper because this is not a long work. You're writing a few page paper. If you want to add words to give additional information, like in this example here, some individuals, and then obviously before this quote in that text, we could see that individuals meant someone who retells urban legends. That's what they're referencing, but you don't want to quote the reference as well because that just would make it too long. So in brackets, you can add additional information to make it clear for your reader. If you want to take out a phrase, a couple phrases, a couple words, use an ellipsis, the ... preceded and followed by a space. So it looks like that. Another little thing I will show you, if you are quoting in the middle of a sentence and you want it to flow into the sentence, let me come up with an example real quick. So here's something that not all professors will even talk to you about, but I'll tell you. So I have a quote here in the middle of the sentence I wrote: because it is never good to offend someone else on purpose, you should apologize, not you, the, okay. Anyway, because it's never good to offend someone else on purpose, the perpetrator should apologize. So I have my quotation marks, I have punctuation around the quote as well. You can use a colon, you can use a comma afterward, etc., etc. So in quotation marks, you can use an exclamation mark, you can use a question mark, you can use a comma and continue on with the sentence. You cannot use a period and continue on with the sentence. Period has to be at the end of the sentence, like after thorough 1. Anyway, so my phrase here, I'm just adding into the sentence all together as one single thought. So it would be more correct to do brackets around that capital O and make it a lowercase o to show that in the original work that started the sentence and the offend was capitalized, but in my context I don't want it to be. But that's something kind of small. Alright, so that is quoting. So I told you about formatting your quotations. So it's important to use support. Sorry, this is cut off. Well, you can click on it on your screen. So you have a topic sentence in your body paragraph, and then you use quotations, examples, ideas from other people to support your argument and support what you're saying. So whenever you use a quote, then you want to explain how it proves your point. You also want to always introduce it with the context of the author and the work, where in the work it's from, or at least a little information about it. Otherwise, it's confusing. If you don't give context, that can be misleading as well. Plus, you always need a subject and a verb anyway. A quote alone cannot be a sentence. So whenever you're using the support in your body paragraphs, you're transitioning between ideas, between individual examples. So that would be within a paragraph, You can use a single word, a short phrase. It can be a classic transition word, or it can just be a phrase like, in another part of the story, blah, blah, blah. It's helpful. You should also obviously transition between your paragraphs, show the relationship between these supporting ideas. You can even do sections within a paper or within a paragraph. So show how it's all related. Those are like signposts that tell your reader where you're driving to, where you're headed, what's going on next, when they're going to, do a sharp turn or something like that. All right, so in my example essays here, I have a paraphrase, estimated 5 million children, and then according to the article title, that means there was no author, only an article title, and that's fine. According to holistic approaches, and then a quote. So that's good. There was no page number apparently, because they didn't give me a page number. And this one I wrote in college, according to the Broadview Anthology of British Literature, my textbook for that class. And then I quote it, and I have the page number. And then I showed that I thought this word was important, disenfranchised individuals, so I put that in quotes to show, she was talking about that. She notes, that's a fine dialogue tag, sentence starter. So you need at least something along with the quote. Alright, well, you have access to this, you can look through it. And this one, so see, this is a fragment. She should have, in his essay, Thoreau writes, and you don't want to say the text says, because the text is not speaking, it's the author who's speaking to us, etc., etc., etc. And then this one, well, there are actually two here. I have an Emerson quote, for example, in Self-Reliance. So I guess it's a short work. It's an essay. So short works are in quotations. We didn't need the double. In Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says, so there's something else. Whenever you're talking about literature, movies, TV shows, whatever, you always use present tense verbs, like it's happening now. He's saying it now. The character is acting right now. Because every time you go to open that essay, open that story, watch that movie, it's happening in the present tense in your mind as you are experiencing it. Even if it's the 20th time you've read the book, you open it up, it's currently happening in the story. So that's why I use present tense for literature, past tense for history, but present tense for literature. Alright, I think that's everything I wanted to tell you for using support and transitions. Mostly make sure you're using correct MLA format for your quotations, and you give enough context and explanation that it's good support and it helps your argument.